folks, welcome to a new episode of the 59th Minute FPL podcast, which is brought to you by The Athletic. I'm Mark McGettigan. You can find me on Twitter at FPL General. Gameweek 10 is done and dusted. The average score was just 44 points this week, which is the second lowest average of the season so far. The main headlines from Gameweek 10: Callum Wilson strikes again, as does Liverpool's Diogo Jota. Manchester City finally found their shooting boots, putting 5 past Burnley. Leeds impressed again, beating Everton 1-0. Bruno Fernandes and Edinson Cavani inspired Manchester United to a second half victory over Southampton. Chelsea and Spurs played out a scoreless draw. Arsenal lost at home to Wolves. We send our best wishes to FPL legend Raul Jimenez. Hopefully he makes a speedy recovery from a very nasty head injury. On Monday night, Fulham got an impressive win over Leicester, finally putting a penalty in the back of the net. While Jack Grealish was on the score sheet for Aston Villa, but they went down 2-1 to West Ham. What a frustrating couple of weeks it's been for us Ollie Watkins owners. The previous game week he had the penalty overturned and didn't get a chance to take it. This week he smashes one off the crossbar. He's looking at a 0-pointer, then he scores right at the end of the game and it's ruled out for a marginal offside call. So very, very frustrating time for us Watkins owners. Game week 11 has a Friday deadline, 6:30pm UK time, so make sure you don't miss it. As usual, there's European games this week, so it's best to hold off on making transfers until Friday if you can. I was just reading this morning as well that there's a lot of COVID issues at Newcastle, which could put their game against Aston Villa on Friday night in doubt. So again, that's another reason just to be patient with your transfers this week, because there could be a bit of chaos to come regarding fixtures at the weekend. If you're not yet subscribed to The Athletic, visit theathletic.com/FPL pod to get it for just £1 a week. In doing so, you'll be able to listen to ad-free versions of this podcast, read my weekly FPL column, and take part in Friday's FPL Q&A with myself and Ben Dinnery. For the second week in succession, there is no new members to the 59th Minute Club. It was disappointing enough last week not to have any, but it's a bit worrying for me that there is none again this week. I think if it becomes a hat-trick next week of no new members, I might have to change the name of the podcast to something else. A couple of notable mentions, as usual. Tom Davis at Everton just about missed out on the shout-out. He made it to 60 minutes and no more. Mohamed Salah, he did okay. He got the assist, he got the clean sheet point as well, but he was taken off after 63 minutes. So Salah wasn't far away. Very surprising actually to see Salah get substituted that early in a game. We don't see it very often. Now he was coming back from having COVID, so probably not really a surprise there. And two more notable mentions: Mikel Antonio at West Ham and Mason Greenwood at Manchester United. Both of them were hauled off at half time, managing just 45 minutes each. So as always, game week 11, keep an eye out for those early substitutions around the 59th minute. A quick review of game week 10. How did it go for me? First of all, I ended up doing nothing last week because I put a tweet up, so some of you will have seen it, that real life took priority for me last week, as it often does for everybody. Sometimes you've just got to put FPL to one side and forget about it for a while. So I ended up not logging in last week, didn't make any transfers, and I just left my team as it was the previous game week. So Bruno Fernandes kept the captaincy, and I didn't make any transfers. Thank you to everyone who sent me lovely messages of support. They helped a lot over the weekend. I won't go into the personal issues on the podcast. All I will say is that with every day that passes, things get a little bit easier, and myself and my wife are doing pretty well. Overall, FPL wise, 53 points. Very happy with that actually. Somehow, I can't believe I got a green arrow, having not made any transfers and just left my team as it was. It was a strange game week. To me, it seemed like a lot of popular players did okay, but I still managed to get a green arrow, without having, I had no Man City players, I had no Liverpool attackers, I didn't have Jamie Vardy, who I feared as well. So to come out of it with a green arrow was very satisfying. 53 points brings my total to 636 overall. A small green arrow from 83k to 77k. So I kind of while I was watching the games at the weekend, have I not made any transfers or made any decisions this week, I said to myself, if I'm still inside the top 100k, with 2 free transfers for next week, I'll be very happy. So I was over the moon to somehow get a small green arrow, because only 3 of my players returned more than 3 points. So the good this week: Bruno Fernandes, captain, got me 20, Grealish got 10, and Chilwell got 8. And I think what this week showed me is you can have, the majority of your team can do badly, but if you get your captaincy right, you can get a green arrow. Those are the only 3 players who got me points at the weekend, and I somehow managed to get a green arrow. So it just emphasises how important it is to get your captaincy right as often as possible. The bad this week, the usual: Ramsdale. I'm not going to talk about him any more than just mentioning his name. Robertson, very disappointing. Robertson was looking good for a clean sheet and maybe a couple of bonus points, and then he gave away that penalty. One of those frustrating ones where, a couple of years ago that would not have been a penalty. So that was a tough one to take. Justin, no clean sheet against Fulham. Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, nothing in the Chelsea game, but kind of expected that anyway, I guess. James Rodriguez, like Robertson, very, very frustrating to watch that Everton game. He scored a great goal, which was ruled out. He got an assist from a corner as well, which was ruled out. So James getting just 2 points was a real kick in the teeth in that one. And he's probably going to leave my team this week now, because I need to bring in a certain Belgian who plays for Manchester City. Calvert-Lewin blanked as well. Not too worried about that. Everton did have plenty of chances in that game, so it was a bit disappointing, but Calvert-Lewin's been amazing this season, so he's going nowhere. And Ollie Watkins, who I mentioned, a nice big fat 0-pointer from Ollie. Slightly worried now that he may lose penalties after that miss. Hopefully not, but he won't be as an attractive pick if he does lose them. So like I said, very happy to get a small green arrow, having gone into the game week with no City players, no Liverpool attackers, and no Vardy. And it's nice to have 2 free transfers now for game week 11. Moving on to my watch list. What I'm going to do this week for this section, as always, I'll mention the players I've added to the watch list following game week 10, also the players I've removed. But what I will do is, and I probably should do this more often, I'm actually going to go through what players are on my watch list. I've got 29 players on the watch list at the moment. I don't have any goalkeepers on it because Ramsdale's a legend. I don't need a new goalkeeper. Joking aside, I don't keep goalkeepers on the watch list because it's a position that I don't change very often. I obviously should have changed it a few weeks ago, but I don't keep them on the watch list. So yeah, I'm going to run through just very quickly. I'll just list defenders, midfielders and forwards who are on there at the moment. Those are the players I'm currently interested in bringing into my team in the near future. But before that, which players did I add following Game Week 10? First of all, Rafinha from Leeds. He cost 5.4 million. He's owned by just 0.2% of managers. He's been very impressive in the last couple of games. He had 4 shots against Everton. 3 of them were from inside the box. He passed the eye test and he scored a great goal. And Leeds are just a great side, particularly going forward. The likes of Bamford, Harrison, Rafinha. There's a lot of FPL options there. But if I was to go for a midfielder at the moment from Leeds, I think I would be going for this guy, Rafinha. He looks the real deal. Riyad Mahrez from Manchester City is also back on the watch list. He costs 8.3 million. He's been disappointing this season, but any player who scores a hat-trick, we have to take notice. Those goals were actually his first attack and return since game week 3. But it was good to see City scoring quite a few goals. Now we can, hopefully rely on them a bit more for FPL, the likes of KDB and players like Mahrez. Maybe we can take a punt on them because they've got the very good fixtures. I'm quite tempted by Mahrez. It's amazing what a hat-trick can do for a player. Your opinion on a player. I wasn't even considering Mahrez before the weekend, but now I quite fancy him with Manchester City's fixtures. I think it's easier to consider him if you're like me and you still have your wild card, because you can take maybe a 4 or 5 week punt on Mahrez, and if it doesn't work out, it's quite easy to get rid of him then on that wild card in game week 16. So Mahrez is back in my thoughts. James Ward-Prowse has forced me to add him to the watch list. He joins Walcott and Armstrong on there from the Southampton midfield. Ward-Prowse, he's having a very good fantasy season. 6.1 million, 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 appearances, so I just can't ignore that. He is on the watch list. Again, I'm probably unlikely to buy him because we're all striving to have big hitters in midfield, the likes of Bruno, Salah, KDB. We've got Grealish as well, who's playing like a big hitter, so it's very hard to fit in someone like Ward-Prowse, but he's on the watch list anyway. And finally, the final player added this week, Edinson Cavani, Manchester United striker, just 8 million in FPL. Very interesting price for this guy. He was excellent in the second half against Southampton after coming on at half time. I'd like to see him get a run of games, run of starts up front for United. When, as a United fan, when we signed Cavani, like many of our recent signings, I wasn't really too excited. But having watched him recently in Europe and also that second half against Southampton, he's a very, very good player. He's still got it. He's pushing on in age. But I think he could do a job for us up front this season. And if he's going to have the likes of Bruno, creating chances for him, I think Cavani at 8 million could become a very interesting FPL option. I would like to see him play up front, and play Martial on the wing, rather than Martial up front. So we'll see what happens there. One thing to note about Cavani is he could be in trouble for a social media post he posted after the game. So that's one to keep an eye on. Probably shouldn't buy him until Friday just to make sure there is no, you could end up getting a ban for that. So just keep an eye on that as well. With just 2 players removed from the watch list after the weekend, Cancelo and Kilman, because both of them were benched in game week 10, so I don't like rotation risk players. So just a quick run through of my watch list, how it looks at the moment. There's 29 players on there. The defenders are, there's no particular order here, they're just sorted by price, so it goes from most expensive to least expensive. Defenders: Diaz from Man City, Bellerin, Cresswell, Reece James, Lamptey, Kufal, Target and Dallas. So those are the 8 defenders on my watch list. Midfielders, no surprise that midfielders take up the most slots here. Salah, Mane, KDB, Ziyech, Mahrez, Jota. And then going a little bit cheaper, Bowen, Ward-Prowse, Theo Walcott, Armstrong, Rafinha and Souček. And forwards: Jamie Vardy, Timo Werner, Gabriel Jesus, Cavani, Richarlison, Wilson, Antonio, Bamford and Che Adams. So those are the pool of players that I'm looking at the moment when it comes to making my transfers over the next couple of weeks. Now, if I had to pick out my top 5 from those 29, so who are my top 5 targets at the moment? Diaz would be up there as the defender I would like to bring in. 3 midfielders: Salah, KDB and Jota. And the forward I would like to have most, who I don't have, is Patrick Bamford. So those are the top 5 most wanted players on my watch list at the moment. And I'm sure I will mention some of those when it comes to the transfer section at the end of the podcast. Time to tackle some Twitter questions now. As always, I've picked out 10 of the best ones. First one comes in from Sam. What are your thoughts on Manchester City assets with the rotation risk? Sam is looking at bringing in a defender, and Sam asks, is anyone completely nailed? I think the answer to that question is nobody is absolutely nailed in a Man City team apart from Ederson, the goalkeeper, but it's quite expensive. I was actually half thinking of treating myself to an early Christmas present and getting rid of Ramsdale and getting myself Ederson just for those 4 or 5 weeks before my wild card. But when you're trying to fit in the likes of Salah, KDB, these guys, it's quite hard to justify paying that for a goalkeeper, and I probably wouldn't be able to do it if I want to make those transfers in midfield and attack. Ederson, I think, is a fine option if you're willing to pay the premium for a goalkeeper. Who are the best options at City? I think Diaz, he's as close to nailed when it comes to the defence. I don't think he's missed a league game since he joined. I don't think Kyle Walker's missed a league game this season either, but with Walker, Cancelo could easily play right back in any game as well. So I think if I was going for a defender, like I've been saying for the last few weeks, just get Diaz. Midfield, KDB is, again, he's probably as close to nailed as it gets when it comes to a Man City midfielder or attacker. He will miss the odd game, I'm sure. I'm hoping this week that, like last week, he doesn't feature in the Champions League, and then we can confidently captain him against Fulham at the weekend. So Diaz and KDB are probably the only ones I'm looking at, because I'm not going to splash out on Ederson. I'm going to avoid the strikers. I mentioned Mahrez on the watch list, but it is quite scary to get Mahrez, because even though he scored a hat-trick, that doesn't mean Pep will start him in the next league game. We've seen Mahrez play quite well in a run of games, and then for no particular reason, misses 2 or 3 games then because Pep decides to change things up. So Diaz from defence and KDB from the attack is the only 2 I would trust there. Question from Sean Henderson: is Rodriguez done? Sean is thinking of moving him to KDB. Yeah, so I think this is basically what I'm going to do this week. I've got the 2 free transfers, so I can turn Rodriguez into De Bruyne, which seems like a no-brainer because when you look at Rodriguez for the season, he's effectively had 8 blanks in 10 game weeks, so it's just not good enough. He did look much better against Leeds. It was very, very frustrating not to get some attacking returns there, if not a 10 plus pointer. But for me now, I've had enough. And yeah, if you can turn Rodriguez into someone like KDB, Salah, Jota, Bruno, I think it's a no-brainer. Question from Kieran Trotter: who is the best 4.5/4.6 million defender for the next chunk of fixtures? So Kieran, I think, is looking to downgrade Reguilon in order to bring in one of those big hitters in midfield. So I've had a look at the next 5 fixtures and I've picked out 3 cheap defenders who I think are good options. So number 1 is Matt Targett. Aston Villa haven't been keeping too many clean sheets recently, but they do have the best fixtures for the next 5 game weeks, so we should see a few clean sheets in there, and Targett's always capable of attacking returns as well. I'm pretty sure Targett put the cross in for the Watkins goal that was ruled out for offside, so unlucky not to get an assist last night. Walker Peters, who I already own, I think is a good option as well. Southampton have decent fixtures next 5. I do think they might have Manchester City in there, which is not ideal, but around that it's not too bad for Walker Peters. And the one I think I would go for is Stuart Dallas. He's kind of been on and off my watch list all season. He's back on it now. I just think he's the most exciting of these 3 options because he's the one who's playing out of position in midfield. He's getting plenty of shots away. It's early days in the season, but if we were going to get a defender anywhere close to Lundstram from last season, I think Dallas has the potential to be that kind of player. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to go and be the next Lundstram, because first of all, Leeds don't keep as many clean sheets as Sheffield United did last season. But Dallas, if he continues to play in midfield, I'm expecting goals and assists there. So I think the next 5 it's a bit of a mixed bag for Leeds, but they're a team I don't worry too much about fixtures, particularly for their attackers. And you can almost class Dallas as an attacker now when he's playing in midfield. So yeah, I'd probably put Dallas number 1, Target number 2, Walker Peters number 3. Question from Alex Ball: assuming we are aiming for a midfield of Bruno, Salah, KDB, is taking a points hit to restructure by selling the likes of Werner, Kane, Son and Vardy worth it? So is it okay to take a -4 to get rid of players like Kane, Son, Vardy, to get in the likes of Salah, KDB and Bruno? I think it is. And what I always say to these kind of questions is, or when people ask me about points hits, I always say I don't mind a -4 if it gets your team to how you want it to look. So if you're sitting there with Kane and Son now, but you'd rather have Bruno and Salah in midfield or something like that, and if it means a -4 to get there, I think that's absolutely fine, because you're basically paying 4 points for your own happiness. You want to look at your team and be happy with it and be confident that it's going to do well over the coming weeks, even taking away 4 points. So yeah, I wouldn't stop anyone from taking a -4 to get their team to how they want it to look for the busy period ahead. Question from Ali: can Jota steal that 5th midfield spot? Is he to be trusted to sacrifice a forward and go 3-5-2? So Ali's considering going 3-5-2 with Jota as the 5th midfielder. My reply to this is absolutely yes. I think Jota is perfectly viable now as a 5th midfielder. Now, we're talking about the ideal midfield at the moment. I would say it's probably Bruno, Salah and KDB, if you can somehow fit all 3 of them in. Grealish, I still think, would be in my ideal midfield 5 as well. And if you can fit Jota in there as the 5th one, now you're probably going to have 3 cheap strikers and probably quite a cheap defence there as well in order to do so. But we know in FPL, midfielders have the most routes to points. Having 5 of them is pretty logical. And if you have those 5, Grealish, Bruno, Salah, KDB, Jota for the next couple of weeks, they should score a lot of points. So I'm absolutely fine with people moving to a 3-5-2 in order to have that midfield 5. I do think Jota, like I said last week as well, he's playing too well to be dropped at the moment. Yes, we could see a bit of rotation with Liverpool. Salah, Mane, Jota, Firmino. There probably will be a bit of rotation, but most teams are going to rotate as we get into the busier period of fixtures. Now, it's not too long until we have a midweek round of fixtures. I think it's game week 12, 13, 14 are weekend, midweek, weekend. So that is when we will see a lot of rotation. So make sure you have a decent bench ready for that busy period of 3 game weeks over the course of a week. But yeah, I really like the idea of that 5-man midfield. Question from Tatarov: what's your opinion on Ziyech? He is so good, but is he going to be FPL good? Good question here. This is exactly how I feel about Ziyech, and it reminds me of James Rodriguez as well. These guys are world-class players, but at the moment they're not looking like top-class FPL assets. With the likes of Ziyech and James, they depend a lot on assists. And when it comes to FPL, obviously goals are more valuable, especially with midfielders. That 2-point difference between an assist and a goal is pretty big. So I tend to focus on goal scorers rather than assisters. KDB might be the slight exception there because he can just get 20 plus assists in a season, but he gets goals as well with penalties. We've seen him hit the post as well. But Ziyech doesn't interest me that much at the moment, and I'm going to sell James Rodriguez, and that kind of tells you how I feel about these kind of players. I mentioned Bruno, Salah, KDB, Grealish, Jota. These guys probably will score more goals than the likes of James and Ziyech. So yeah, for me it's all about goal scorers. So yeah, Ziyech and James are down the pecking order in my thoughts at the moment. The thing with James, he drops quite deep as well very often. Quite often when Everton are in and around the box, he's not in there. It's the same with Ziyech. He hogs the touchline quite a lot. Yes, his delivery is excellent, but I would like to see him in the box a little bit more as well. Next question from Rohan Kilnani: Bamford with tough fixtures, Wilson, Antonio or Watkins? Who's the best cheap replacement for Kane? So this is a question I'm asking myself as well, because if I want to get KDB this week, I'm probably going to have to lose Kane to free up the cash. My preference here is Bamford, regardless of the fixtures. I just think Leeds are excellent. I think Bamford's having a very, very good season, regardless of what we thought about him coming into this season. I think he looks great every time I watch him. Leeds look great, and his underlying stats are excellent as well. So I'm downgrading Kane. Planning to downgrade Kane to Bamford, which frees up about 4 million. Bamford is still very, very cheap at 6.1 million, and Bamford and Kane, on what we've seen this season, there shouldn't really be a 4 million difference there. So even though I'm downgrading Kane, I think Bamford is capable of scoring very similar to Kane over the coming weeks, or at least keeping pace with Harry for 4 million less, or even more. Maybe it's 5 million less. The other options Rohan mentioned here: Wilson's next 4 fixtures are very nice, but there is some doubts over that fixture on Friday. So whatever you do, don't bring him in until Friday when you know that game is going to go ahead. Wilson's is a fine option for the next 4 game weeks. Antonio I would avoid because injury issues. He only managed 45 minutes last night. And Watkins as well. I don't like Watkins as much as I like Bamford, or probably Wilson now as well, to be honest. Even though I own Watkins, I am slightly worried about him losing penalties. And when you watch him, he never has loads and loads of chances in a game. It's usually 1 or 2, whereas with Bamford, you can often get 4 or 5 chances in a game. So yeah, Bamford number 1, Wilson number 2, Watkins number 3. Question from Shane Brewster: would you consider a triple captaincy on De Bruyne against Fulham, or do you always keep chips for double game weeks? Yeah, I won't be doing triple captain. I wouldn't advise it either, because if you triple captain a Man City player in a single game week, you're just asking the FPL gods and Pep Guardiola to punish you by not starting KDB, or maybe giving him 65 minutes. So when you play your triple captaincy, ideally you want to have 2 games, 180 minutes potentially of a player like KDB, a Bruno or a Salah or a Kane, these kind of players. So yeah, I would not play the triple captaincy chip until the second half of the season when we have a double game week. And who knows, this is the craziest of all seasons. If there is fixture chaos over the coming weeks and months, we may end up with a triple game week. I don't think we've had a triple game week for quite a long time, probably about 10 years ago. I think it was Middlesbrough had one because they had a lot of UEFA Cup games. But yeah, I mean, in the craziest of all seasons, if there was ever going to be a triple game week, it probably would be this one. So hold on to the triple captaincy chip until we know more about double game weeks in the second half of the season. Question from Mark Cram. Do you ever consider a set and forget captain? Premium assets generally return over a season, and it removes the emotional turmoil that comes with chasing the best captaincy option each game week. Given that Bruno is such a reliable fantasy asset, is he the best set and forget option right now? This is something I don't really do. I do like to, I think a fun part of FPL, even though I'm not a big fan of captaincy in the game, I think, it's fun each week trying to, pick out who is the best captaincy option. Targeting fixtures is a big one for me when it comes to captaincy. So I don't set and forget. I know some people do it. Some people go into a season and say, I'm just going to captain Salah for 38 game weeks, which over the course of a season can work out pretty well, if Salah has a big season. But to me, it's kind of boring. Yes, it takes the decision-making process away, but a game week like this, for example, Liverpool play Wolves, who are a very good defensive team. KDB plays Fulham. If you're set and forget on Salah, you're capping them against Wolves, but KDB's got Fulham. Who would I back there to come out on top this week? It's got to be KDB with a fixture, even though Fulham have looked a little bit better recently. But yeah, that's why I don't like set and forget, because you'll get to game weeks like KDB against Fulham, and you're snookering yourself by not being able to captain him. So set and forget is not for me. That's not to say it's not a viable strategy. Final question for this week is from Jens. If you can't afford KDB without taking a hit, would you buy Mahrez instead? My answer to this would be no. I would find a way to get KDB, even if it's a -4, rather than getting Mahrez, who is not guaranteed to start, even though you could say the same about KDB. Like I said, hopefully KDB gets the Champions League off this week, or at least gets reduced minutes, which will be a good sign that he's going to start against Fulham. So yeah, I wouldn't settle for Mahrez if you can't get KDB. I would find a way to get the Belgian Prince.
The first time I interviewed Neymar, he was 14.
He was pretty much famous approaching household name status before he'd even played for the Santos first team.
Barca should have been better prepared. They really did not have a contingency plan for if Neymar were to leave.
You had the French president, Emmanuel Macron, calling it really good news on the day.
Without selling Coutinho for that amount of money, Liverpool's recent history would be very, very different.
But then again, Neymar changed the whole dynamic.
I'm Adam Leventhal, and this is Beyond the Headline, Neymar, the transfer that changed the world. Over the next 3 episodes, we will explore Neymar's €222 million move from Barcelona to Paris Saint-Germain, a transfer that changed the game not only because it more than doubled the world transfer record, but explain how the ripple effects made it arguably the most significant transfer in the history of the game. That's Beyond the Headline, available wherever you get your podcasts or get it ad-free via the Athletic app.
Captaincy and transfers for Game Week 11 now. I'll start off with captaincy. The best option this week, I think I would probably say KDB number 1 against Fulham at home. I'd probably put Bruno Fernandes, given how reliable he's been recently, number 2. He's away to West Ham. Grealish is a decent option at home to Newcastle if that game goes ahead. And Timo Werner, if you own him, I think is a good option against Leeds, who give up a lot of chances. Chelsea are at home in that one. There's some tricky fixtures this week for captaincy candidates. Sheffield United against Leicester, so Vardy away to Sheffield United is an option, but it's not one that I fancy. Tottenham play Arsenal. We know Kane likes playing against Arsenal. Son is an option as well, but again, it's one of those games a bit like Chelsea Spurs last week, which was 0-0. This one could easily be 0-0 as well, particularly when Jose Mourinho is involved. Liverpool play Wolves. Like I said, Wolves are one of the best defensive teams in the league. So would I be comfortable captaining Salah, Mane or Jota this week? I don't think so when KDB has Fulham at home. So I think for me, it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to buy De Bruyne and I'm going to captain him against Fulham. I'm not going to overthink it. Bruno will be my vice captain. Transfers, I've got 2 frees. KDB is coming in for sure as long as nothing happens in the Champions League. My most likely transfers this week are Rodriguez and Harry Kane out for De Bruyne and Bamford. Now, by making those 2 free transfers, it leaves cash in the bank. It gives me the option to do Bruno Fernandes to Salah in game week 12. I think Bruno plays Manchester City that week and Salah plays Fulham away. So Salah would come in and probably get the captain's armband there. Now, selling Bruno, especially if he does well again against West Ham, is going to be very, very difficult. But that would be a game week 12 sale, and I'm probably going to wildcard game week 16, so I could always get him back then. So that's the most likely moves. Another option for me would be, instead of selling Kane for Bamford, I could sell Son and get Jota. But I think I prefer the Bamford idea. The other issue I might have this week, if that Newcastle Villa game did get postponed, I've got Watkins and Grealish, so that would be a massive headache for me, and it may change my transfer plans if that does happen. So fingers crossed the game goes ahead. I mentioned Salah back in game week 12, most likely to happen. As always, I won't be giving transfers too much thought until Friday, as things will likely change between now and then. It will be Friday transfers for me this week. Thank you for listening, folks. If you'd like to hear more podcasts from me later this week, the start of a new month is the best time to check out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/FPL General. You can try it for free for the month of December. Have a good week. Stay safe. Look after yourself and your loved ones. And good luck for Game Week 11. I'll be back next Tuesday to preview Game Week 12. Talk to you then.